Alien Girl felt the human's rhythm align with hers, but the tradition she revealed at dawn was pure. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main characters. The wind howled fiercely as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an eerie light across the desolate landscape. Ethan Miller, a seasoned explorer and military officer, had crash-landed on a distant planet after a mishap with his shuttle. The world outside was cold, harsh, and unforgiving, its surface cracked and barren, a testament to the long-forgotten civilizations that once thrived here. Ethan's eyes scanned the horizon as he adjusted his thick jacket, his breath visible in the freezing air. He had been stranded for what felt like days, alone in an alien world. His mission had been to map uncharted territories, but now, it was a fight for survival. His ship was beyond repair, and the supplies were running out. He had no choice but to venture into the unknown, hoping to find shelter or at least some signs of life. It was then that he noticed her. At first, she appeared as little more than a shadow against the backdrop of the wasteland. But as he approached, her figure became more distinct. An alien woman, tall and graceful, with skin the color of the ocean and eyes that shimmered like silver stars. She was kneeling by the remains of what seemed to be an old temple, her delicate fingers brushing against the ruins as though in a quiet prayer. Ethan paused, unsure whether to approach or keep his distance. Her presence was both captivating and intimidating, and for a moment, he wondered if he had wandered into a trap. The woman sensed him before he could take another step. She straightened, her gaze locking onto his with an intensity that sent a chill down his spine. "Who are you?" Her voice was melodic, yet carried a sharpness that betrayed her wariness. Ethan raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Ethan Miller. I'm stranded here. My shuttle crashed. I don't mean any harm." The alien woman studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. There was a strange sense of recognition in her eyes, as if she were searching for something within him, something she couldn't quite place. "You are human," she said slowly, as if tasting the word. I thought the humans were gone." Ethan frowned, puzzled by her words. "Gone? What do you mean?" "The last of your kind was lost in the war," she said, her voice distant, as if the memory pained her. "You shouldn't be here." Ethan shook his head. "Well, I am, and I need help. Can you?" The woman stepped forward, her movements fluid and graceful, yet there was a sense of caution in her every step. "Help? You are a stranger, and I do not know if I can trust you." "But—" She hesitated, as if grappling with an internal struggle. "There is something about you, something I feel, something I cannot ignore." Ethan's heart quickened. "What do you feel?" She turned away, her gaze lost in the distance. "Your rhythm. It aligns with mine." The words hung in the air, their meaning unclear. "What do you mean by that?" he asked, confused. The woman didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked back at him, her eyes softening. "It is not something that can be explained, but there is a bond between us, whether you realize it or not. It is as if our hearts beat in unison, despite the vast distance that separates our worlds." Ethan stood still, trying to process her words. He had never met an alien before, let alone one who spoke of emotions and rhythms. That's impossible," he said, more to himself than to her. But before he could say more, the woman raised a hand, silencing him. "You will understand soon enough," she said, her voice almost like a whisper. "At dawn, I will reveal the truth of my people's tradition, and then you will see why this bond is pure." Ethan didn't know what to expect, but something in her eyes told him that the journey ahead would change everything he thought he knew about the universe. And about himself. The cold winds of the alien world howled through the cracks in the barren landscape, as Ethan Miller stood beside the woman, Lyra. Plan, her presence as otherworldly as the planet they found themselves stranded on. The stars above shimmered like distant jewels, the only light in a world that seemed devoid of life. Lyra's words lingered in the air, her claim that their hearts beat in unison echoing in Ethan's mind. He couldn't understand it, couldn't fathom how such a bond could exist between them. But he couldn't deny the strange connection he felt, something beyond mere survival, something deeper. As the first light of dawn began to break across the horizon, Lyra led Ethan to a secluded clearing, her steps sure and confident despite the harsh terrain. She stopped in the center of the clearing and turned to face him, her silver eyes meeting his with a gaze that seemed to pierce through him. "This is where it begins," she said, her voice soft but filled with an undeniable power. Ethan stood still, unsure of what to expect, but trusting her more than he cared to admit. He had come to rely on her presence in these past few hours, and though he still didn't understand her, he couldn't deny the pull she had on him. As the sun's rays slowly warmed the frozen ground, Lyra began to speak, her words slow and deliberate, as if each one carried the weight of her people's history. "My kind," she began, "we are bound by traditions that have existed for millennia. We do not seek love or companionship as you do, but we recognize the bond between two beings when it happens. It is not something we can control." Ethan's brow furrowed as he listened intently, trying to comprehend the significance of her words. "What does that mean?" he asked quietly, his voice tinged with confusion. Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile, her expression softening. "It means that we are not as different as we appear. My people have long held that certain individuals are destined to find each other across the vastness of space, regardless of our differences. And when this happens, when the rhythm of our hearts aligns, it is a bond that transcends all others." Ethan swallowed, his mind racing. He had never heard of anything like this before, and yet, something deep within him stirred at the idea. Could it be possible? Was it possible that he and Lyra were somehow connected in a way that went beyond logic, beyond reason? "But why me?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Why would this happen with a human?" Lyra's gaze softened as she took a step closer to him, her presence both comforting and overwhelming. "You do not yet understand," she said gently, "but in time, you will. It is not just the rhythm of our hearts, Ethan. It is the connection of our souls, the understanding that transcends language, culture, and even biology. It is the essence of who we are, and when it happens, there is no turning back." Ethan's heart raced as he stood before her, the weight of her words settling into his chest like a heavy stone. He wanted to believe her, wanted to believe that this strange bond between them was real, that it meant something. But he couldn't shake the doubts that still lingered in the back of his mind. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra studied him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face as if looking for something. Then, without a word, she reached out and gently touched his chest, her fingers barely grazing his skin. The touch sent a jolt of electricity through him, and for the first time since the crash, Ethan felt something other than fear. He felt something more, something that went beyond his need for survival. Lyra's touch lingered for a moment longer before she withdrew her hand. "Now," she said, her voice steady and calm, "we wait. The bond will reveal itself in time, and when it does, you will know what it means." Ethan nodded, his heart still racing, but now filled with something else, something he couldn't explain. As they stood together in the quiet of the dawn, the connection between them grew stronger, as if the very fabric of the universe was pulling them closer. And though the journey ahead was uncertain, Ethan knew one thing for sure. Whatever this bond was, it was something that would change their lives forever. The days that followed were filled with a quiet tension, an unspoken understanding between Ethan Miller and Lyra Clan as they navigated the unforgiving terrain of the alien world. With every passing hour, Ethan felt the connection between them deepen, though he still struggled to fully comprehend the implications of Lyra's words. The rhythm she spoke of, the bond between their souls, lingered in his mind like a constant hum. The winds howled through the desolate landscape, but there was a strange calm that settled over them, as if the world itself had slowed to allow them to understand one another. Lyra led Ethan through the rugged landscape, her movements graceful and fluid, a stark contrast to the harshness of the world around them. She seemed to be in her element here, her alien nature perfectly adapted to the barren land. Ethan, on the other hand, felt every step in his bones, each movement a reminder of how far he was from home. Despite his exhaustion, there was a sense of peace when he was near her, a feeling he couldn't quite place. As they reached the edge of a cliff, overlooking a vast, rocky valley. Lyra stopped and turned to face him. Her silver eyes met his, and for the first time, Ethan saw something soft in her gaze. "The bond is more than just a connection between hearts," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper against the wind. "It is the foundation of our very existence. When two souls align, they become one in a way that transcends the physical. The heartbeats may be the first sign, but the true strength of the bond comes in the moments that follow. It is in the quiet understanding, the way we begin to see each other without words." Ethan looked at her, feeling his heart race. "What does that mean for us?" he asked, his voice low. Lyra's lips curved into a faint smile, but there was a sadness in her eyes that Ethan couldn't ignore. "It means that you and I, though from different worlds, have been brought together by something beyond our understanding. It is a bond that cannot be broken, not by time, not by distance." Ethan took a step closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't know what this is, Lyra. I don't know what it means, but I feel it. I feel it when I'm near you, and it's something I can't explain." Lyra nodded, her expression softening. "You don't need to explain it," she said gently. "You simply need to feel it. And in time, you will understand." The air between them seemed to hum with an invisible energy, a force that neither of them could deny. Ethan reached out, his hand trembling slightly. As he touched Lyra's arm, her skin was warm to the touch, the softness of her alien form unlike anything he had ever experienced. As their hands met, a surge of energy coursed through him, a feeling that was both overwhelming and comforting. It was as if their souls had intertwined in that moment, their connection solidified in a way that went beyond the physical. Lyra's eyes closed for a brief moment, as if savoring the sensation. When she opened them again, there was a new light in her gaze, a quiet understanding that passed between them. "You are not just a human, Ethan," she said softly. "You are something more. You have the power to change the fate of your world and the fate of mine." Ethan's mind raced as he absorbed her words. He had always thought of himself as just a man, someone trying to survive in a vast, unknown universe. But now, with Lyra by his side, he began to see himself in a new light. Maybe this bond, this connection between them, was more than just an accident. Maybe it was the beginning of something much greater, something that could alter the course of their lives and the future of both their worlds. "What do we do now?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with uncertainty and hope. Lyra stepped back, her gaze never leaving his. "Now, we continue," she said simply. "We continue forward, together. And when the time comes, we will face whatever lies ahead, as one." The days continued to pass, and Ethan Miller found himself adapting to the alien world around him, though the weight of his newfound connection with Lyra Clan was never far from his mind. They had traveled together for what felt like weeks, navigating the harsh terrain with a sense of purpose neither of them had expected. Lyra's presence, once enigmatic and distant, had become a source of comfort and strength for Ethan. The rhythm she had spoken of, the bond between their souls, felt more real with every passing day. It was as if they were learning to move as one, each step in sync, each glance a silent conversation. One evening, as they sat around a small fire they had built together, Ethan finally found the courage to ask the question that had been lingering in his mind. "Lyra," he began, his voice quiet in the stillness of the night, "what happens when this bond is tested? What if it's not enough?" Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes reflecting the warmth of the fire. "The bond will always be enough," she said softly, her voice carrying a conviction that seemed to resonate deep within Ethan. "But it is not the bond that will be tested, Ethan. It is our ability to understand it, to accept it. That is where the real challenge lies." Ethan listened carefully, the flickering flames casting shadows on Lyra's face. He had always thought of himself as someone who could face any challenge, someone who could overcome any obstacle. But this bond, this strange connection between him and Lyra, felt different. It was something he couldn't control, something that went beyond logic and reason. "And what if the world around us doesn't understand?" Ethan asked, his brow furrowing. "What if the people we encounter, on my world, or yours, reject it?" Lyra's gaze softened, and she reached out, her fingers brushing against his. "There are many things in this universe that others may never understand," she said. "But that does not make them any less real. What matters is that you and I understand it, that we accept it. And in time, those who are meant to understand will. Ethan held her gaze, feeling the weight of her words settle into his heart. It was as if she were speaking not only to him, but to the very doubts that had been weighing on him since he had first arrived on this world. I don't know if I can live up to this, Ethan admitted, his voice filled with uncertainty. I'm just a man, Lyra. I'm not some hero, some chosen one. I'm just trying to survive. Lyra's smile was gentle, understanding. You don't have to be anything other than who you are, Ethan. You don't need to be a hero to me. You just need to be you. And that is enough. The words hung in the air, a quiet truth that Ethan had not fully grasped until that moment. He didn't need to be someone else. He didn't need to carry the weight of the universe on his shoulders. All he had to do was trust in the bond they shared, trust in Lyra, and in himself. The next morning, as the sun rose over the alien landscape, casting a soft glow over the barren land, Lyra led Ethan to a place that would change everything. It was an ancient site, a temple that had once belonged to her people. The ruins were covered in vines and the remnants of a civilization long gone. But there was a quiet reverence to the place, a sense of history that seemed to echo through the stones. Lyra stopped in front of the temple's entrance, turning to face Ethan. This is where our journey truly begins, she said. The bond we share will be tested here, but not in the way you think. It is here that you will understand what it means to truly be one with another. Ethan looked at the temple, feeling a sense of awe wash over him. This was the moment he had been waiting for, the moment when everything would be revealed. He stepped forward, side by side with Lyra, ready to face whatever came next, knowing that together, they could face it all. The air inside the temple was thick with the weight of history. Ethan Miller stood at the entrance, his boots sinking slightly into the soft earth as the morning light filtered through the cracks in the ancient stone. Lyra Clan stood beside him, her silver eyes reflecting the sunlight as she gazed at the towering structure in front of them. There was something sacred about this place, something that spoke to the very core of their bond. It felt as if the temple itself was waiting, as if it had been waiting for them to arrive. Lyra turned to Ethan, her voice a whisper, almost as if speaking louder would disturb the reverence of the moment. This is where it begins, Ethan. Where everything we've spoken of, everything we've felt, will make sense. The rhythm we share, the bond, it all comes from this place. It is the heart of my people's legacy, the foundation of who we are. Ethan nodded, though the words felt heavier now, more profound than before. He had always thought of himself as someone who understood things logically, someone who could reason his way through any situation. But this was different. There was no logical explanation for what had been happening between him and Lyra. He didn't understand it fully, but he knew he felt it. The pull, the connection. So what happens here? Ethan asked, his voice steady, despite the uncertainty swirling inside him. Lyra smiled softly, a mixture of sadness and hope in her expression. Here, you will understand the true meaning of our bond. It is not just about feelings or emotions. It is about choice. It is about the power we have to shape the future, not just for ourselves, but for the worlds we come from. Ethan looked at her, his heart pounding in his chest. Choice, he repeated, the word foreign on his tongue. Lyra nodded. Yes, our bond is more than a connection between hearts. It is a decision, a commitment. We choose to be connected. And when we make that choice, we open ourselves to the possibility of something greater than either of us could have imagined. She turned back to the temple, her gaze lost in the distance. This is the place where my ancestors made their greatest decisions, where they chose to unite with others across the galaxy. And now, it is our turn to make that choice. Ethan felt the weight of her words settle deep within him. He had always been someone who reacted, who took things as they came. But now, Lyra was asking him to make a choice, to take control of his destiny in a way he had never considered before. His mind raced, but for the first time in a long while, his heart was clear. He looked at Lyra, his expression firm, his resolve strengthening. I'm ready, he said, the words feeling right. Lyra smiled, a glint of something ancient and powerful in her eyes. Then let us enter, together, and let us choose what we will become. As they stepped into the temple, the air seemed to change. The temperature dropped slightly, and the walls, covered in intricate carvings and alien symbols, seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. It was as if the very stone of the temple was alive, watching them, waiting for them to take the next step. Lyra led the way, her movements graceful and confident as she approached the center of the room. There, in the middle of the temple, stood a pedestal, its surface smooth and polished, glowing faintly in the dim light. "This is it," Lyra said, her voice a soft reverence. "The heart of our people's legacy. And now, it is the heart of ours as well." Ethan approached the pedestal, his hands trembling slightly as he reached out to touch the smooth surface. As his fingers made contact, a surge of energy pulsed through him, a feeling so intense it took his breath away. It was as if the universe itself had opened up to him, filling him with knowledge and understanding. And then, he understood. The bond. The rhythm. It was all a choice, a decision they made together, and in that choice, they could change everything. Ethan looked at Lyra, his heart racing with a newfound clarity. She was no longer just an alien, no longer just a stranger. She was his partner, his equal, and together, they could shape the future. He stepped back, his gaze never leaving hers. "I choose this," he said, his voice strong with certainty. "I choose you." Lyra's smile was filled with pride and something deeper, something more personal. "And I choose you, Ethan Miller." With that, the temple seemed to hum, as if acknowledging their decision. The bond between them was no longer just a feeling. It was a promise, a commitment. And in that moment, everything changed. The decision they had made in the temple hung in the air, a weight that neither Ethan Miller nor Lyra Clan could escape. It was a bond forged not by circumstance, but by choice, a decision that would shape not only their futures but the future of the worlds they came from. As they stepped out of the temple, the sun now fully risen, its light casting long shadows across the ancient ruins, a new chapter of their journey began. Lyra glanced at Ethan, her silver eyes soft with an emotion he couldn't quite place. She had been quiet since their shared moment in the temple, and for a moment, Ethan wondered if she was processing the same flood of thoughts and feelings he was. "How do we move forward from here?" Ethan asked, his voice steady but carrying the weight of his uncertainty. "How do we live with this choice we've made?" Lyra stopped walking, her gaze fixed on the horizon as the wind picked up, swirling dust around them. "We move forward the same way we always have, Ethan," she said, her voice calm, almost as if she were speaking a truth that had been long known. One step at a time. She turned to face him, her eyes meeting his, with an intensity that spoke volumes. "But now, we do it together. And together, there is nothing we cannot face." Ethan nodded, the resolve in her words anchoring him. He had always been someone who lived by action, someone who faced challenges head-on. But this was different. The bond they shared was something that couldn't be quantified, couldn't be explained. It was something that transcended understanding. "Together," he repeated, the word feeling more real than anything he had ever said. The weight of it felt right. As they continued walking, the silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was a silence of understanding, of two souls that had found a rhythm in each other. Lyra led the way, her steps sure and confident, her presence a guiding force. Ethan followed, his mind still racing but his heart grounded in the certainty that whatever lay ahead, they would face it side by side. The days that followed were a blur of motion and discovery. They encountered other life forms, some curious, others indifferent, but none that seemed to challenge the bond they had formed. Lyra taught Ethan the ways of her people, their culture, their customs, and the deep-rooted traditions that guided their actions. She spoke of her ancestors with reverence, of the choices they had made and the sacrifices they had endured to bring balance to their world. Ethan listened, fascinated by the complexity of her people's history, but even more so by the way Lyra spoke of it. There was a passion in her voice, a fire that he hadn't seen in anyone before. She wasn't just a survivor, a warrior. She was a keeper of a legacy, someone who carried the weight of her people's future on her shoulders. And now, he was a part of that future. As the days passed, Ethan found himself thinking more about his own world, his own people. The weight of the decision to stay on this alien planet, to become part of Lyra's world, was not lost on him. But every time he looked at her, every time their eyes met, the uncertainty faded. He had made the choice, and he knew it was the right one. One evening, as they stood beneath the stars, the vastness of the universe stretching out before them, Ethan turned to Lyra. "Do you ever wonder what the future holds?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Against the night. Lyra looked up at the stars, her expression thoughtful. I used to, she said softly. But now, I don't need to wonder. Because with you, Ethan, the future is something we will shape together. Her words settled deep within him, and for the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan felt a sense of peace. The future wasn't something to fear, something to be uncertain about. It was something they could create. Together. The days that followed were filled with a quiet, yet steady sense of purpose. Ethan and Lyra continued their journey, moving through the alien world with a newfound understanding of each other, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Lyra taught Ethan more about her people's history, the challenges they faced, and the ancient traditions that guided them. Each story, each lesson, brought Ethan closer to the realization that his life was forever changed. No longer just a man from Earth. He was now part of something much greater, something that transcended the boundaries of his world. One evening, as they sat beneath a sky filled with unfamiliar constellations, Lyra looked at Ethan, her silver eyes reflecting the stars. The bond we share, she began softly, is not just a connection between two people. It is the key to understanding the universe around us. My people have always believed that true power comes from unity, from the connection between all living beings. Ethan listened intently, the weight of her words settling deep within him. He had always thought of power in terms of strength, of physical ability. But Lyra's words spoke of something deeper, something more profound. Unity, he repeated, his voice thoughtful. That's something I've never really considered before. Lyra smiled, her gaze softening. It is something many of us forget, she said. We are all connected, Ethan. Every action we take, every decision we make, it ripples through the universe. And that is why the bond we share is so important. It is a reminder that we are never truly alone. Ethan nodded, the realization dawning on him. The connection between them was not just about survival or companionship. It was about something greater, something that tied their fates together in a way he couldn't yet fully understand. But he knew it was real, and that was enough. As the night wore on, they fell into a comfortable silence, the only sound the gentle rustling of the wind. Ethan glanced up at the stars, feeling the vastness of the universe pressing in around him. It was both humbling and awe-inspiring, and for the first time in a long while, he felt at peace. Do you think we're ready? He asked after a long pause, his voice breaking the silence. Lyra turned to him, her expression thoughtful. Ready for what? She asked. Ethan met her gaze, his heart heavy with the weight of the question. For whatever comes next. For the challenges we'll face, the people we'll meet. Do you think we're ready to change everything? Lyra didn't hesitate. We are ready, Ethan, she said, her voice steady and unwavering. The bond we share is the foundation of everything that's to come. As long as we stay true to it, we can face anything. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her words settle in his chest. The path ahead was uncertain, but with Lyra by his side, he knew they could face whatever came their way. Together, they were stronger than they had ever been before. And as they sat together under the stars, Ethan couldn't help but feel that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. The future was waiting for them, and for the first time in a long time, he was ready to embrace it. He looked at Lyra, his heart full, and smiled. Together, he said softly. Lyra smiled back, the unspoken understanding between them stronger than any words could express. Always, she replied, and in that moment, Ethan knew that no matter what the future held, they would face it together, united by the bond that had brought them together in the first place. The morning light broke over the alien horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Ethan and Lyra stood at the edge of a cliff, gazing out at the vast expanse before them. The land stretched endlessly, a mix of barren desert and jagged mountain peaks in the distance. Despite the stark beauty of the landscape, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change. They had spent weeks traveling together, learning from each other, and with every step, their bond had grown stronger. Lyra, once a mysterious figure in his life, had become his partner, his equal. They had faced the challenges of the alien world side by side, and each moment felt like a test of their connection. Lyra turned to him, her silver eyes catching the light of the rising sun. This place, she said softly, her voice filled with reverence. is where my people made their first great decision. They chose to reach out to the stars, to connect with others beyond our world. Ethan nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had learned much about Lyra's people, their culture, and their struggles. They had once been isolated, separated by the vastness of space, until they had chosen to break down those barriers and connect with other civilizations. And now we make our choice, Lyra continued, her gaze never leaving the horizon. The same choice my people made all those years ago. We choose to face whatever comes next together. Ethan's heart swelled with the certainty of her words. He had always been someone who acted on instinct, but this was different. This wasn't just about survival. This was about something far greater, something that transcended the physical challenges they had faced. This was about unity, about making a decision that would change not just their lives, but the future of their worlds. "I'm ready," Ethan said, his voice steady and strong. Lyra turned to face him, her eyes filled with warmth. "I know you are," she replied. She reached out and gently touched his arm, a silent reassurance of their shared commitment. Together, they turned back toward the path that lay ahead. The journey was far from over, and the challenges would only grow more difficult. But now, they were no longer just two individuals trying to survive in a harsh world. They were united, bound by a connection that went beyond anything they had ever known. As they began walking, the weight of their shared decision settled into Ethan's chest. He had chosen this, chosen her, and in that choice, he found a sense of peace he had never felt before. They walked on, side by side, ready for whatever lay ahead. They knew that the future was uncertain, but together, they would face it. They would shape it as one. The wind had settled, leaving behind a stillness that seemed almost unnatural. Ethan Miller and Lyra Clan stood at the edge of a cliff, looking out over the vast alien landscape that stretched endlessly before them. The bond they had chosen, the one that had brought them together, felt stronger now than ever before. With each passing day, the weight of their shared decision seemed to carry more significance. They were no longer just travelers in an unfamiliar world. They were part of something greater, a shared destiny that had only just begun to unfold. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lyra turned to Ethan, her expression serene, yet full of an emotion he could not quite name. "We've come a long way," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But this is only the beginning." Ethan looked at her, his heart swelling with a sense of understanding that had eluded him for so long. "I know," he replied, "but I feel like we're finally where we need to be." Lyra smiled, a genuine, rare expression that spoke volumes. "We are," she said simply. "And now we move forward, not just as individuals, but as one. Together." The air around them seemed to hum with the unspoken promise of their shared future, the quiet anticipation of the unknown. Ethan had always been a man of action, someone who preferred to face challenges head-on. But this connection with Lyra, was different. It wasn't just about the journey or the destination. It was about the partnership, the unity they had created, and the way it had transformed their paths. "What comes next?" Ethan asked, his voice filled with a quiet curiosity. Lyra looked out over the landscape, her gaze steady and focused. "What comes next is up to us," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "The bond we share will guide us, but it is our actions, our choices, that will shape the future. Together, we will change the course of our worlds." Ethan felt a surge of determination rise within him. He had never been one to shy away from challenges, but this felt different. There was no uncertainty in her words, no fear. There was only the understanding that whatever came their way, they would face it together, as one. "Together," he repeated, the word now more meaningful than ever before. Lyra turned to him, her eyes locking with his in a way that made his heart race. "Yes," she whispered, stepping closer. "Together." The moment stretched out, the world around them fading into the background as they stood there, united in their shared purpose. The future, once uncertain and distant, now seemed within their grasp. With each other, they would navigate whatever challenges lay ahead, their bond the guiding force that would carry them through. Ethan knew that whatever the universe threw their way, he and Lyra would face it side by side, and nothing could tear them apart. As they stood there, the stars above them began to twinkle in the deepening sky, the light reflecting in Lyra's eyes. It was a sign, Ethan thought, a sign that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The bond they had chosen, the unity they had found, was just the beginning of something extraordinary. And together, they were ready to face it all.